we think about the context of today and the fact that this nation just has a history of social inequities and social injustice. None of this, sadly, none of it's new. It's just now being filmed. And so, what I am most excited about, quite honestly, I think for the first time, is that there seems to be just a greater sense of frustration and outreach around this outside of just Black voices. I think with the world witnessing, the murder of George Floyd, I think it just that really fueled just a different conversation at such a level that I have not seen before. And I think to hear this man call out for his deceased mother, as a mom, that resonated for me, and I think it resonated for most. And I think for the first time, we're really having some very serious conversations. So that it just really underscores so much work to be done. I think as I sit in this context of, content and storytelling and entertainment, we saw a significant shift, probably in the content space about 10 years ago, where it was clear that there was such a need and a desire for, Black content to tell the broader narrative around the Black experience. And so when you had people beyond, the BETs of the world, but the ABCs, and when you start to see all these networks, quite honestly, start to change their whole business model because they too recognized that there was such a hunger for Black content. We just saw this seismic shift. Now, on the heels of that, I think what we have to then recognize is that, the media has played a very, critical role, quite honestly, in terms of perpetuating racism. One, by way of the stories that they choose to tell and don't tell, and the images that they've chosen to show and don't show. And I think what I'm excited about now is that there is a real desire and some critical people who are in the room and at the table and making decisions around trying to open up that broader narrative around the Black experience. And I think that we know that the power of great storytelling is that it pulls people in who, can really, one, not only through education, but also through exposure and ultimately to have a sense of empathy for others. And so I'm excited about it because I do think that, one, there's just so much Black content out in the marketplace. And I think, for us is now really being intentional around the stories that we're telling, and how we will use these stories to kind of have, break down some barriers and have some conversations that we should have been having, many, many years ago. So I'm excited about it. We've just recently launched an initiative called Content for Change. And it really is, the intent of it is to be even more intentional about telling stories that are of importance, that affect, that really speak to some of our causes and concerns. And I think as more, networks and platforms get into this space, we're all going to be for the better. And so while I definitely think that there's so much to do, I do recognize the power of great content and the power of great storytelling. So I'm excited to see the space and where it's going to continue to go as it seeks to educate, kind of the masses, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to really follow up Kim's answer because she pretty much hit every point directly on the head. But if I could add to what she said in reference to content creation during times right now where social justice is at an all-time high since probably the 60s, I think that the voices that tell this story are what I have seen in my experience in Hollywood change. When I first came in to the business, there were a lot of Black faces in front of the camera, but when you look behind the camera, there weren't that many Black showrunners, there weren't that many Black writers in writers' rooms. And, part of the shift that we have seen in recent years is that not only are there Black artists interpreting Black characters on screen, but there are also Black storytellers behind the scenes. You got your Shonda Rhimes, your Issa Raes, your Ava DuVernays. I mean, Oprah, Tyler Perry, Will Packer. They're just there's so many more names than were available at the time when I was coming up, and we are able to get real, true, authentic stories told, the real Black experience told with authenticity. It's not just, a white person writing for a Black person and throwing in a few, what they think might be cool words, and that's it. We're actually diving deep into real stories. I think another thing too that's happened is that I've noticed that you don't have to code switch the way you used to in this business. You can be authentically, unapologetically Black now, right now, and at one time that wasn't the case. It was looked at as, oh, whoa, ease up now. 2 3 Black folk get together, like, what are they doing over there? And that, to me, there's definitely a shift where we are able to express ourselves the way that we would in private without having to apologize for the way that we do. And last but not least, another thing being an actor and being in front of the camera is that I've noticed that the ability to pitch ideas, pitch authentic beats and moments that happen to your particular character are much more welcome. Seeing things that might throw up a red flag or might be offensive to my community and my people, when you're reading through a script and bringing that to a writer's attention, are much more welcome now than in the past. In the past, it could have been perceived as, oh, well, what are you saying? Like, and now it's more, oh, please educate me, help me write this so that it doesn't come off offensive. And I think that a big responsibility should also fall on the artist because of that, because it's not just regurgitating words. You have to understand that as a Black person on camera, you are immortalizing a character and you are painting a picture that you can either make it a very detailed, specific picture, or if you're just memorizing words and just doing whatever they tell you to say, then you're painting just a broad stroke, wall, which could paint the wrong picture of what a Black man or a Black woman is or isn't on camera. So it really is a responsibility as an actor to make sure that you are painting the right image. You're not always going to play an upstanding, good human being, but when you play a criminal or when you play somebody who is not on the right side of the law or morality, you have to know how to do that in a very specific way so that it's that character that you're playing and not all Black men are that. And that was something that I've always made sure that I did, that I played whatever character I was playing responsibly enough and specifically enough so that people would say, "Ooh, that character was scary," or "That character, man, he was something else," and not say, "Oh, Black men are this" or "Black men are that."
And I think for me that the connection there, even what Lash just said, even in the corporate environment, is you're at the table for a reason, right? And your experience, your opinion around what needs to drive, whether it's a brand or a product or a company forward, is why you're there. And so to be your authentic you and be able to lean in and have the confidence around that is highly sought out after right now. And so I think, if you're at the table and you're not, using your voice and your POV in these environments, then you really do need to move and let someone sit there, because I do believe that we've all seen companies and brands who have made horrible mistakes. And you realize, and you always say, who was in the room? You always say that, like, who was in the room? And I think, what I would say to people is that you're there for a reason. It's not that you're there to be, decode the Black experience as much as you are there to be authentic to you and whatever that experience was for you, right? And so no one can argue what your personal experience is. And I to me, that was a personal unlock for me in terms of my corporate growth, was that I was sitting in these boardrooms and in these environments and said, no, that this is why I think it is. you're chasing the consumers who look a lot like me. And in order to do that in a real authentic way, it needs to look like this. And more importantly, don't target me, invite me. This notion of, when we talk about marketing, this notion of targeting someone always felt very predatory in nature to me. It was like, if you think about someone who's targeting you, you're like in the crosshairs of someone trying to chase you, versus what I would say is, how are we really trying to invite, these consumers to be a part of the brand in a meaningful way? And just those nuances. And that's the power of, I think, whether it's, your experience at Howard, or really having just the confidence that you actually are of value and you have something to bring to the table. That's the game changer, whether you're, in front of the camera or, at the table.